because this gentleman here has never spoken one. It's his first one. Make him feel welcome. He is the purveyor of the Slow Arctic Alaska Sasquatch YouTube channel. I almost fell over. Did you see that?
I saw that.
Nice recovery.
It was the stage.
I got reflexes like a mongoose.
Yeah, oh, I noticed.
Yeah. We've got Mr. Fred Roehl in the house. Please give him a big welcome, a big Sasquatch. Mike is here, sir.
Forgive me if I have a seat here. How's everyone doing? I don't know if anyone here is familiar with my YouTube channel or follows it in any way. I'm from Bristol Bay, Alaska. We were raised with the knowledge of the herring. It was not hidden from us when we were little. Especially my Aunt Lucy, God bless her heart. I'll hold this a little closer. She made sure to tell us all the time, don't turn your back in the woods, don't whistle in the woods, don't go alone, and just a whole litany of little warnings like that. And every time we would question why, the hairy man will take you and eat you. So there was nothing ever in our oral tradition that proclaimed these things to be our forest friends or forest protectors. It was always been a adversarial type of environment in which they laid it out for us. There was never they never held back from the dangers of it because of how remote we lived. I don't know if I know a few of you have been to Bristol Bay and that area. There's some very remote places, and there's some serious stuff that goes on out there that a lot of people, they never hear about. A lot of the locals don't talk about it. I have many relatives that have had way more experiences than I have, and they clam up. They won't talk about it at all because it's not in our culture. Like the idea of following tracks, no. If we were raised, you see tracks, you go the other way. It was never presented to us as a, no one ever challenged us to go looking for these things. They were just part of the neighborhood, I've been contemplating what I was gonna share with you guys today and what I was gonna bring to the conference. And the one thing that makes the most sense to me is to talk to you guys about the people like yourselves who have been in remote places and had some very ugly things happen. There's a lady right now, she's not going to her cabin in Kinney Lake because of the harassment. She recently lost a husband, and she's in her 70s, and she can't handle the harassment. A lot of people will look at these and go, oh, great story, that's a great story. Well, there's lives involved in all these stories. Everyone I talk to multiple times before I share their experience. Not to necessarily vet them, but they'll share initially, they'll get it off their chest, and then they'll remember more of it. Because when these things happen to people, it's a traumatizing thing. That's how we were told stories when we were a kid. It was just in that same vein. There's a huge impact on the people who have these experiences. Me, myself, I suffered for years after our experience in '06, self-medicating, drinking heavily, almost a suicidal level of death wish almost, and I know that's the extreme end of it, but everyone who deals with this stuff that can't get it off their chest, they don't have someone to talk to about it, they suffer in silence. I've met at least 4 different people since I started the YouTube channel that have thanked me just for being there to listen, because they were, popping pills or doing drugs or drinking or whatever to self-medicate, because it's so isolating to those who have had an experience that get mocked and they shut up forever. It's almost like their own prison they built in their own mind, because those around them, their loved ones, they don't accept it, and so they end up on a weird self-destruct. Some of them, not all of them, some of them just, it's whatever, and they carry on, but there are those that are affected very heavily by it. I was speaking about this lady, me and Ryan here, we went and visited with the lady over, it was Easter, just this last Easter, down Copper River Valley near Kinney Lake, and it's disheartening to witness someone in and this is a hardcore Alaskan woman. She's been here longer than I've been alive, you know, and lived in extreme conditions. She's not a wallflower. She, you know, it's not in her nature. And for her to be so upset that she can't even go to her cabin, you know, where, you know, she lived with her husband before he passed, that to me breaks my heart, because her family doesn't necessarily not believe her, but there's no real support system for people like that. None. You know, you go into an old folks home, let's say, you hear them talking, you're gonna be, oh, that kooky old broad, you know, oh, she just, you know, wants attention. That's not the case. You know, I've met people who just want attention, but there are people like this lady that are not seeking attention. They just want to be left alone, and they can't. And she can't even bring herself to go back to her cabin. You know, she invited us back, and she said, let me know when you guys want to go, and I'll go down a day before. Like, she's so unwilling to be alone at that place. It's really hard on people, you know. So if you guys, you know, you're in your day-to-day life, I know it sounds outrageous. Oh, you saw a big giant that was hairy and yelled at you or whatever. Don't necessarily dismiss that. It happens all the time. I'm sure people in here have dealt with similar things. All I ask is just don't be quick to dismiss somebody because you don't necessarily, they may not look right to you. Maybe they're a little scruffy. Maybe, you know, they've been isolated a little bit. Doesn't mean anything. You know, it just means they haven't socialized in a while. I would say hear them out, because not all of them are kooks. Another thing I wanted to share with you guys, as far as coming from Bristol Bay, and I know I've spoken to a lot of natives around the state. There is not one tribe I'm aware of, and if I'm wrong, please correct me, but there's not one tribe that I'm aware of that has a good view on these beings. Now, there are some tribes down southeast that view it differently. You know, they have totems with the whistling and whatnot. But when you get down towards like what Vancouver Island, you know, BC, they have a totally different view. You know, they view it as a protector of the woods, means respect or something, you know, and that doesn't necessarily translate up here. Everything seems to be a lot different up here when it comes to the level of aggression. If you look at the channel, the vast majority of the shares involve these things making noise and people getting the hell out of Dodge. That's the overwhelming, like, vein going through all the videos. However, there are the ones, you know, I don't want to put anyone's name out in public, but there are several individuals that have dealt with very similar things that I did in '06 on that same river. A number of people. I didn't even know it at the time. I found out just recently. I could easily list off a dozen people that have had to fire shots to get these things to stop their aggression. Kicking in cabin doors, knocking over someone's shack, killing their dogs, viciously making sure the owner was watching as it ended the dog's life. You know, I had a guy, his name, my cousin Elizabeth Cook, she did an interview with Small Town Monsters last year. Great lady. They had one mimicking a known child cry. A known child preying on a motherly instinct to lure her and her other cousin out of their apartment. Don using his dog to lure him out. Using child laughter to lure women away from the crowd. There's kids giggling in the woods. That level of cunning is something that I could never overlook or trust. There's something ominous about that level. It's just unreal. I mean, I know nature can be savage, but to prey on a woman's instincts, the motherly instincts, that is at the core, just borderline evil, in my opinion. And this is just all my opinion, but it's borderline evil stuff. Can you imagine someone imitating your mom to get your attention, to lure you outside? That's just, it's hard for me to wrap my mind around that level of just that severe cunning. And to what end? Look at all the, now, don't misunderstand me. I'm not trying to say everyone missing in Alaska is because of the hairy man. I'm not saying that at all. However, there's what, 500 to 2,000 missing people a year. they're the weird ones. Mary Wilson, just last year, Stampede Trail. She got out of her truck, leaving a grandchild in the back seat, gone. No sign of her. They found some personal belongings a mile further up the trail, but you won't hear anything else about that. They got there out. Open investigation. You will not find any more other pertinent details than the missing person bulletin. The missing hunter, everyone heard that on the news. Up by Coldfoot, gone, just gone. Those are the missing people cases that really intrigue me because of what we went through in 06. How many other people dealt with that, but they didn't get to tell their story? You know, I believe there's quite a few. That's one of the driving forces, and those who have seen my channel, I lay out the experience that they had. I don't never say, oh, you gotta believe them, you gotta believe me. I don't say none of that crap, because it's irrelevant what you believe. I talk to the people, I lay it out, and I try to give people the information, like especially south of the Denali Highway by Sweet Lakes. There's a litany of encounters there, you know, and it's more public safety awareness. You know, they got beware of bear signs everywhere where there's bears. I would like to see it more accepted and post signs saying, hey, there's some hairy man activity, you know, whether you accept it or not, it happens, you know. And same with most bear warnings. You can see those signs all the time and not see one bear, you know. It would be the equivalent, in my opinion, but it's not something I take lightly when I'm talking to the people that share, because I know what it takes, having been through an experience, to step forward, put yourself out there, and talk to somebody about it. And for a lot of people, it's almost like counseling. You know, it's a weird form of, you know, to get it off their chest, that they stop holding on to it. And a lot of people, there's a guy, Brian, I shared his experience at Bear Glacier. This thing was standing over him. He didn't see it, but he felt its footsteps as it was running away back in 2015. He hasn't been in the woods since. But because he was able to talk about it, he's getting back out. He's starting to live his life, because there's hunters I've talked to 40 plus years in the same spot, hunting caribou. Never would believe a hairy man story in their life until that one day. 20 minutes of their time just ruined almost a 50-year hunting hole. You know, it's just gone. They won't ever go back. You know, and these are grown, strong men. They're not wallflowers. Any Alaskan hunter in here knows what it takes to go hunting. Even if you do it by ATV, it's still not, it's not a guarantee, and it's not handed to you. You gotta go out and earn it. You know, and for guys like that to just, it ends basically their life, their outdoor life, and that's all they had forever. You know, that's the part I try to bring forward with the channel, is how it affects people. And sometimes it doesn't translate too well, because I just share their experience and then I leave it alone. I don't really pick it apart or any of that kind of stuff. I think that would take from it. But since we're all here and it's a conference, I might as well share these things with you guys. There's nothing I feel good that can come from seeking these things out. That's just my opinion. I go out seeking them out. I know it's kind of a stupid thing to say, be aware, don't do that, but I'm gonna go do it, you know. It's not what I mean. It's be careful what you wish for. All those super curious and really want to see one of these things and be in their presence, be careful what you wish for. It may be granted to you. You know, I think it was Oscar Wilde said that 2 worst tragedies in life is not getting what you want and the other is getting it. Just be aware of that. It's a double-edged sword. There's, in my opinion, way more going on. Like, I have 150 some videos on my channel. That's a drop in the bucket compared to the private conversations I've had. The people that just needed a shoulder just to be heard. It's a drop in the bucket. And I know for a fact there's probably thousands of stories just in Bristol Bay alone, but you won't hear about them, you know, because there was a guy, I believe his name was Richard. He had posted on Facebook, he took a cell phone, a crummy cell phone, but he took a photo of a hairy man behind 5 moose. Just because it was standing there, and it was like, oh crap, I'm not hunting moose here. But he took a picture and he put it on Facebook to warn people, right? I think it was Richard Togiak's his name. I have that photo. It's compelling. This thing is obviously taller than the moose, and the group of 5 moose are obviously walking away from it, but you know, he put it out as, hey, the hairy man's real, beware when you're out moose hunting, just as a simple warning, and just nothing but mock and ridicule. You know, he removed the post. You know, I don't even know if he posts on Facebook anymore. It's that kind of thing. Like, a lot of people ask me about evidence. Show me evidence. Well, there's so much out there. What evidence people show, I show on the channel. You know, Vincent from Nunapitchuk, he had some tracks in the tundra, and various other things. There was a video from Selawik where this thing running across the tundra or walking across carrying something. But, you know, even stuff like that that's genuine, people will immediately start picking apart. You know, and so because there's that attack kind of feel in the air, a lot of people I know have excellent footage, excellent evidence, but they're not going to share it. They're not going to share it publicly because of the ridicule. You know, look at all the Patterson haters that are out there. Patterson Gimlin footage. That thing's been being picked apart for how many years? And it's that kind of mentality that keeps people from sharing stuff. You know, so. It's really rough on people, is I guess what I'm getting across here. I know you guys don't want to hear me drabble on about that kind of stuff, so what I'll do is I'll share you guys some experiences that were shared with me about 6 years ago. I was talking to my cousin Spencer. It was shortly before he passed away. And he was telling me about when him and his friend Michael Murphy, a good friend of mine, before he passed away, this happened back in 1994, the winter of '94. They went on a snow machine ride, and they started in Dillingham. They went to Twin Hills, Manicota, and then from there, I think they were bootlegging or something like that. Just dumb kid stuff. But anyway, they were on their way back, and they decided to take this shortcut. Well, this shortcut wasn't such a shortcut because it went up this embankment, and it kind of had little ridges and steps as you went up. And one of the third or fourth one up was really icy. So once they got up there, it was dark, and one of them slipped their track. So they didn't have the tools to fix it. So they decided, well, we'll tow it. You know, we'll take the belt off and we'll just tow it back. Well, they were trying to get the track to move. It wouldn't spin, so they couldn't even tow it. So they doubled up on the one snow machine. It was a 500 little Indy light, not much torque for two people on it, if anyone knows snow machines. So they come back down the hill, and it's in the darkness. As they're approaching the bottom of the hill, a tree falls across the trail, just out of nowhere. Tree crashes down. They're immediately thrown from the sled because they break, they hit the tree, and they're off the sled. As they're getting up and collecting themselves, they can hear running. I'm getting goosebumps thinking about this, but they hear this thing running around the woods around them, and they're in pitch black now. The snow machine died. There's no headlamps on. Only light they had was a headlight for the Polaris, and if anyone knows a snow machine, you turn it off, the light goes off. It runs on a magneto, but they sat there trying to collect themselves. With one of them had a head injury. Spencer had a big cut on his head. He had hit the tree when the sled tipped or whatever. Well, he was trying to address his wound. They're trying to pull themselves together, and they keep hearing this noise circling them. Well, Michael Murphy ended up getting his, he had a 357. He dug it out and started shooting in the air, trying to scare whatever off. They still couldn't see anything, and they were trying to pull themselves together. He finally got the snow machine started and was trying to turn it and follow this movement they were hearing to get a light on it. And then as soon as the snow machine started, the screaming started. Spencer said that it felt like they were surrounded by the scream. It was so intense and it felt so close, and they still didn't get a glimpse of it. You got to picture the scene. Michael's trying to run this snow machine in a small circle, which anyone who owns a snow machine knows it's not as easy as it sounds. So he's trying to rodeo this thing around to get a light on this thing, and it's always out of the light. He fired shots. This thing is still going. So they decide, okay, let's get the snow machine on the other side of the trail and let's get the hell out of here. Well, as they're trying to, the only option they had, because the trees are so thick, is lift the skis over and then push the sled over the fallen tree, right? Makes sense. So they're in the process of doing that when all of a sudden the snow machine, as they're lifting and pulling, is no longer moving. According to what Spencer said, something had grabbed a hold of the back of the snow machine as they were trying to lift it. So every time they tried to lift, this thing would stop it. For what purpose, I don't know. I mean, to me, that's like the level of that. Like, now they again, head injury, they could have been panicking, it could have seemed like someone was holding it back, but in his spirit, whatever you want to call it, he felt this thing was continually grabbing. They're trying to fight the snow machine over. This thing's in the dark, obviously very close to them. Spencer got emotional at this part because he ended up fighting with Michael over the gun. No one was hurt from the gun or anything, but he was arguing. He had hard feelings about, hand me the gun, you work the snow machine, I'll shoot. Well, the reason it broke Spencer's heart is because Michael died the next year, and so they never made amends from this. But as it progressed, as they got the snow machine out of there and moved down to the tundra, and they were still trying to get a light on this thing, as they were doing that, still arguing, I do believe Michael had been drinking at that time, and they kind of lost focus on the noise. As they were pulling themselves together still and arguing, all of a sudden another piece of broken tree comes flying out. They had left the snow machine running, so they had light. But as they jumped on the sled to get out of there, there was chunks of broken wood being tossed at them. Like he said, it seemed like it went on forever, but it couldn't have been more than half a mile. 2 people on a 500 can get moving fairly quickly. Not, you're not winning a race, but you can get moving on a packed trail, and that's what they were doing. They were getting out of there. But for at least a half mile, this thing was keeping pace, chucking wood at them as they're going along. Just envisioning that, it's just so creepy. Like, one of the parts that bothered me when he was sharing it is, like, I asked him, I was like, well, what makes you think this thing, if it was that close grabbing onto the back of the sled to stop you from moving it, what stopped it if it was really after you, just snap you and take you? And, he didn't have an answer for that, but which is understandable. Who knows? Who knows what causes it? You know what I mean? But they got out of there safely. Well, outside of the stitches he needed, but, there's so many different experiences, very similar to that back in Bristol Bay, whether it be, especially berry pickers. Anyone going out berry picking, be aware, especially as a woman, don't go alone, be aware. I literally, over the course of the last about 4 months, I've gotten at least 83 different instances of these beings trying to lure women away at the berry patch. Just very creepy stuff. The young lady, I shared her experience, she said she felt like she was in a weird trance. They were on a 4-wheeler checking the progression of the berry patch, seeing how it was coming along, seeing if anything was right. They're going along, and they could see open for about a mile to each side, and then there was a big pond about, not quite that far in front of them on this big horseshoe 4-wheeler trail that was just kind of wagon trained into the tundra. Oh, GoPro overheated, thing. So they're going along, and they've been out there for hours, saw nothing around them at all. Then all of a sudden they're going down to the next patch just to go down a little further to see if anything was right. And all of a sudden this thing is standing there. And she said initially it felt like her grandpa, her uppa calling her over, a very peaceful sense. They felt like, oh yeah, let's go. And then she goes off the trail and bumps her knee on the 4-wheeler, and it snaps her out of it. And then she realized, this is a deadly situation. It became very clear. This young lady is like 21, 22, something like that right now when she shared it. And this happened like a year or 2 ago. Again, it falls back to, if you're a woman and you're bold and you want to do things on your own, that is awesome. Just be aware. Be aware out in the woods and in the tundra. I don't know why. I think it's a vulnerability thing.
And no, I'm not sexist, I'm just saying, you know, it's just how it seems to work out that women get preyed on a lot. A lady in New Studio Hawk, same thing. It was motioning to her when she was on her four-wheeler at the berry patch. There's a lady named Mary. She lives, I'm trying to remember which village, because I try to keep track of the different areas. I believe it was outside of Russian Mission. Somewhere down there, near Mountain Village too, I believe is another one. But they were out with a little group of kids picking berries. When they were, according to what she said, they were approached 3 different times from 3 different areas during their berry picking. So they started at one spot, they noticed weird movement, they couldn't make it out, so they moved. It's what we do, you know, you see something strange, you get the hell out of there or whatever. So they moved to another spot. This thing came in again, then they got a clearer picture of it and decided, let's get the hell out of here. And they were literally leaving. They felt calm from when they were leaving the situation, and they stopped again because they felt calm, and the thing came in again, trying to motion the kids over, trying to motion the women over. It's such a creepy thing. Just ladies, if you're, you know, adventurous berry pickers that go out alone, be aware that don't fall for the trick of, you know, following them into the woods or whatever. Also, I want to share with you guys, sorry, I'm not well prepared for a presentation, so forgive me. It's not my normal thing, but there's a guy, his name is Terrence. I'll leave his last name out of it. If he chooses to, you know, share publicly, that's up to him. But he had an experience happen just outside of Palmer, going towards the glacier basically. It was like, if nothing comes in the morning, I'm out of here. Well, it just so happens that night at dusk, up on the ridge, rocks started tumbling down. So he was like, there must be a bear moving up on the mountainside causing rocks to tumble. Well, halfway through the night, he had to relieve himself, so he gets out of his tent and he had a big spotlight, and he was just kind of looking around to see what was around. And as he's panning, he gets to the back side of his tent, literally on the opposite side of his tent from where he was standing. This thing was standing there, but it had squatted down and was just looking over the tent at him. All his weapons are in the tent. He didn't know, he had no problem finishing what he was doing, I'm sure. I'm positive of that. But, so he was in a conundrum. He was mentally locked onto this thing, staring at it, but yet terrified, where he literally has a loaded rifle right there, almost at his feet. But he was so locked up with fear, he couldn't bring himself to make that move. He literally could not reach for the gun. He felt like he was stuck. If he moved, he was gonna die. I asked him, I was like, what ended up happening? You know, like, you just didn't stay there the whole time. Obviously you got out of there. What happened? He said he had to sit. He sat down where he was standing, still with his pants half down, sat on the ground and just started sobbing, started crying. This is a grown man, he's, you know, I'm not trying to talk him up or anything. We're not best friends or nothing like that, but he's a man's man. He's a hunter. He hikes and he does his own stuff. He sat down and sobbed, crying. And I tell you, when you hear a grown man crying, sharing something with you, it's hard not to take something from that. I don't know. I'm just envisioning what he was dealing with, and it sucks. Can you imagine being in that position? Like, it goes away when you're sobbing, you know? I asked him, well, what do you think you're crying just kind of made it wander off or something? He was like, I think it felt sorry for me. I was like, well, okay, fair enough. Me personally, I'm biased. I don't trust these things. I can't say that if one didn't show itself in the trees, I wouldn't just start shooting the damn thing. But that's me. You know, like I said, most of the experiences people have, these things make noise and people get the hell out of there. And you know, if anyone sees that kind of behavior, get the hell out of there. You know, I think it was Tom Seawood, First Nations in Canada. He was like, he was talking to a reporter or something.
The reporter asked, well, what happens if people get curious? He goes, well, look at all the missing people reports. You know, check the internet, see who's missing. Obviously, they found out, you know. So just be aware in the woods. I know a lot of people view these stories and these encounters as a form of entertainment, which it is. And I agree, you know, you're sharing, you know, it can easily appear to be just a story, you know. It can be taken just as at face value as a story, but there's always someone involved in that story. There's a person that's dealing with that stuff. It's the human impact. It can be a very terrifying thing that doesn't go away. Just, you know, just keep that in mind. If you come across some crazy old coot in the woods and he's obviously been alone too long, that, you know, of course, be leery of guys like that. There's a reason they've been alone that long, but just because they share something with you doesn't mean they're a kook at all. The number of people, professionals that I talk to, pilots, law enforcement, government investigators, tribal chiefs, tribal police. I talked to several different people who would be viewed as a credible witness because they're a trained observer, right? But even those people get shouted down. You know, a lot of them don't want to come forward publicly because they get shouted down. And these are people that, a large portion of law enforcement, they're trained observers. They're paid to be there for people. But yet, when they're sharing something that happened to them, no, that didn't happen. You know, oh, you saw a bear. You know, that's a big one. You know, everyone's seeing this 8-foot tall bear that's walking around on 2 legs. I haven't seen a bear like that personally. And if anyone has, please let me know. I will share your story on the channel. But just crazy stuff. And again, forgive me, I'm not a, this is, like Bean said, this is my first expo. I'm not a public speaker per se, so just bear with me, please. The overwhelming thing is be aware in the woods. I was talking to a guy, he made I get random calls from people, I'm not hard to find. He called me up and asked me about the Denali area. And he was asking about one real specific spot, and I'm like, I've never been to that spot. Why are you mentioning this spot? Obviously, you know that spot, tell me about it. You know, I was trying to get him to talk. He was like, well, maybe you should go and check that spot out. I was like, for what? You know, well, what am I going there for? You know, to share a little bit here. Well, he finally, after damn near pulling his teeth or telling him I'm just gonna get off the phone, he finally speaks up. He was in the middle of spotting caribou there last fall, and where he was standing, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Cantwell. As you're rolling into Cantwell, you got the Denali Highway off to your right. And he was just on the non-motorized side, about 2 miles down the highway to the north side, where he was standing up on this little plateau. And at this plateau where he was standing, he said that he was approached from the south. This thing came up. He watched it come across the road. He watched it come towards him on this, you know how the mounds are there. They're not like full-grown mountain. They're like big buttes kind of deal. Well, he was up on one of these steps on one of them, and that he watched this thing come across the road looking like it was staring straight at him, and beeline just straight for his position coming up the hill. He said that he opened fire on his way down the hill. I asked him, what do you mean open fire? Were you like shooting it directly? What do you mean by this opening fire? He said he was shooting in the air, hoping that it would change its course. That thing kept coming straight at him, so when he went down and was trying to get to the trail to get back to the road, which he could see the road from his vantage point, this thing changed its course to follow him as he went downhill. I asked him, did it pace you? Did it try to catch up to you? What was the nature of its movement towards you? He said it was methodical, slow, and once it got within 20, 25 yards,
it stayed at that 20-25 yards and literally followed him out. He said as soon as he got to the road, it was like a whole different day started. The weird feeling he was getting from this thing following him, it all went away. He no longer saw that creature. It was just gone. He didn't say it disappeared. It just, these things blend in so seamlessly. If they stop moving, you're not going to see the damn thing. It's just not going to happen. It's like a duckling in the grass. It's just gone. But he said that I needed to go there, and I was like, I'm not going to go there. I'm not going to go stand where you stood and let's try to see if we can recreate this. I'll pass on that all day long. I don't care what gun I got. 30-06 did me no good. So I guess I'm on the front lines of it because people reach out to me to share their experiences. So it gets a little it gets a little hard sometimes with especially the elderly, the ones that are being singled out almost. The vulnerability aspect, it wears on me. I talk to these people all the time. And it's very, very hard on people that are living through something like that. Can you imagine going to take your trash out, and every time you do, you gotta bring a gun because you're scared of that big hairy thing that's right over there in the trees all the time? Can you imagine living your life like that? Like, I was sharing a story of a woman, her name was Beverly. She lived out that Willow Road on the backside of Hatcher's Pass. What's the name of that road there?
Willow Hatchers.
Willow Hatchers. This was back in the 70s. She had moved up here with her husband and kids. She had won the lottery in the state that she was from, so they wanted to live in Alaska, so they came up to Homestead or whatever. And this lady Beverly was a patron of the local restaurant where I heard this story from the lady who owned the restaurant. So Beverly would come there 3 times a day. She didn't cook, so she would get the meals for the family at the restaurant and just check in, say hi. She'd been there 3 years, and over the course of the last 4 months of her life, she had tried raising chickens. She set up a coop. All of a sudden, her chickens are going missing. Just random stuff. She was seeing this thing was showing itself every time her husband and sons would leave for work. It would come out from somewhere and start tormenting her. For what purpose, I don't know. It's just what was shared with me. So this lady shared this with me, asked her, why don't you just shoot the damn thing? And the lady Beverly responded, well, every time I see it and I'm near a gun, it's out of range 300-400 yards, and she wasn't gonna shoot. So it just progressed forward, and she felt isolated, and that lady Beverly took her life. And then after she took her life, husband and sons moved away. The house was pointed out to me. Well, the house site, it's no longer there. It's no longer standing. But that kind of thing happens to people. And that's why I take what I do so seriously when I'm sharing people's experiences, trying to get the word out. That's why the interactive map on the website. If you're going somewhere, even if you're a non-believer, just check out, see what happened to whoever in that area. And keep in mind what they dealt with, whether it be the owl hoots, the whistles, the weird barking sounds. I mean, they imitate and mock just about anything. Just be aware of this stuff if you're going into those areas, because it may seem like a fanciful story for YouTube or something for someone's mystery book. This is real life stuff. You don't have to believe the people. Just keep in mind what's shared, and if maybe you come across an 800-pound owl. I haven't personally. Well, maybe I have, but it wasn't an owl. You know what I mean? So just be aware of these things. There's no safety. There's literally no safety if you're real close to these things. In 06, when I shot the one with the 30-06 3 times center mass, I didn't have anything to go on. Forgive me, I thought the ringer was off. It gave nothing back. It was a big black mass, and it was was just moving, like gliding, coming out of the tree line. When I shot it, it just stopped moving forward. It didn't flinch. I don't know what was different about this one. It was pitch black. It absorbed light. Like, what does that? What absorbs light? You just put a bright ass million kilowatt beam on this thing and it gives nothing back? What does that? You know, it felt like a big black nothing there for us is what it felt like. Yeah, I know I'm being a little dramatic about it, but that's in the moment, that's what it felt like. And why it didn't drop when I shot it, I have no idea. I've heard things since about muscle density and rib fusing and some other stuff, but how they get that information, I don't know. But when I shot it, I have been a lifelong hunter. I know my guns, I know how to shoot, and I know I was shooting true. I hit this thing 3 times and it did nothing. The one I saw looking at me through the window, when I shot through the wall, that one screamed. At least that one screamed before the, you know, as the place shifted. But there's certain aspects of this stuff that there's no answer for. You know, it's one of the things that drives me forward is maybe come across an answer to something somewhere. Maybe it's just one more share away. Maybe someone has a little piece of the puzzle that's just, it makes some other things make sense. But I think these things are being hidden from us. I think there is a calculated effort to anyone coming forward to make a legitimate report, like let's say with the Alaska State Troopers. That report's not making it anywhere. They may stand there and shine you on and write down, but you rarely will get an incident report. And when you do get one, if you do get one, and I'm not casting aspersions on the troopers, they do a great job, that's not what I'm saying. The powers that be above them will not allow certain information to filter. It's just the way it works. And it's, until that is treated more seriously and the reports are taken more seriously, I think people are gonna still go missing regardless, but I think a lot of the missing people, it could be avoided if information, like everyone's been sharing at this expo, people in your personal lives that have had experiences, if more of those things were shared universally, it would be a lot easier for more people to come forward and share. There's a lot of people that clam up. They don't even want to talk about it. Even when they reach out to talk to me, sometimes I gotta fish the information out of them. You know, and they called me, and I'm like, okay, what happened? Well, did this happen? Did that happen? You know, sometimes you end up kind of leading them on or whatever just to get them to talk. But hopefully all that changes here. You know, with events like this, people sharing their experiences. Does anyone here have any questions or anything?
So, is the general feel then in the Crystal Bay area that these are animals, or are they related possibly to?
What was relayed to us as kids is it was never anything other than a flesh and bone creature with kind of like a mystical type of aura to it. Nothing was ever really elaborated on like, let's say, when my Aunt Lucy would bring up the hairy man, she wouldn't say it's our lost tribe or anything like that. It was always the hairy man was a specific thing that did specific things, and there wasn't really all that mystical stuff put on it, if that makes sense. There was no, what would that be called? You know, the woo, the spiritual aspect wasn't there. It's not like, oh, leave tobacco for our forest friend. We don't grow tobacco in Alaska. You know what I mean? It doesn't translate. I hear people all the time, take tobacco with you and leave tobacco. For what? I smoke cigarettes, I'm gonna roll it up and smoke it. I'm not gonna leave it for some critter. You know, it's just, you know.
That it's maybe an early form of us?
Personal opinion?
Yeah.
No, just a question about developing deterrence on these things. You know, like my experiences, I realize now I had like a boat there, I could turn things around. You know, or maybe shoot it with Roman candles or a flashbang grenade, something to scare the shit out of them instead of scaring you half to death.
Yeah, I mean, hey, when in Rome, if you got the cojones to stand there and light a sparkler at it, hey, God bless you. God bless you. I mean, I'm going for something heavier than a sparkler or a flare gun, to be honest with you.
I'm saying something to determine where you don't have to shoot them.
No, alternatives, you're right, and let's be honest here. The biggest, baddest dude in here, if he has a gun in his hand and this thing shows itself at 10 feet, what do you think is gonna happen? Is that big tough guy, is he gonna challenge this thing to arm wrestle? No, he's gonna immediately point that gun at it. He may not shoot, but he's not the, you know, it's, the potential is there, is all I'm getting at. That might be a business industry, making Bigfoot flares. I don't know. You know, hey, I got a Squatch flare. You know, if one comes around, just pull the ripcord and pray. Me personally, I have trust issues with these things. I've seen the other side of the coin. I've seen what happens when the screaming and the yelling stops and the building starts moving. You know what I mean? So I have a skewed point of view, and I'd be the first to admit I'm biased. I'd be the first one to shoot. Screw a flare, screw a sparkler. I'm aiming for an eye socket. That's just me. I'm just being honest with you. But I'm sure there are alternatives to shooting. You know, I personally, from my culture, I've never been taught anything other than stay away. And my only reference point is what I've experienced. You know what I mean? So you have a valid point. I'm sure there's an alternative to damn near everything. But in context, in the moment, have you had an experience where you lit a flare or you lit a sparkler or a Roman candle?
Oh, I had a flare. I could have put some light behind what I was going after, and I could have seen that it was not a bear. What I thought was a bear was not a bear.
Oh, okay. Maybe I'm misunderstanding. I'm having a hard time hearing you, sir. So you had an experience and you shot a flare to backlight it?
I had a flare. I could have put the flare behind the brush line and you could have seen it a lot better than knowing at that moment that, whoa, I'm not looking at a bear, I'm looking at
yeah. Yeah, I mean, that definitely worked, you know. I had a thought, you know, about this research thing and what might work as a lure. And I had my little brother record my nieces playing for about 45 minutes. And I planned on taking those little girls playing audio file and making it a loop. And setting up a tent and putting a little Bluetooth speaker in there and just let it play. And I thought about it some more, and I was like, gosh, I don't know if I want to lure something in like that. Talk about grabbing the tiger by the tail. What do you do then? That is what I was asking myself. Okay, Fred, you're a smart guy. You lure this thing in, it's coming in looking to mess with children or spy on kids. Now what? What it boils down to is I'm gonna end up shooting this damn thing. Do I wanna do that? Like, it's real easy to plan something, and I don't know how well your guys' plans go when you plan something, but mine never go according to plan, ever. And not necessarily in a bad way. It just, that's the way stuff goes down. It's never that pristine moment of like having a flare on hand to like backlight something. What I've learned is the overwhelming factor is the fear. That bam, instantly the fear kicks in. And once that primal fear kicks in, if anyone in here has felt it, you know what I'm talking about. It's knowing your place in the food chain, and it's not what you think it is. We're here, we're obviously intelligent, you know, we got our means, we got stores, we feel we're at the top. Get out in the woods, and you know, you go down the ladder real quick. And you had a question?
Oh, I was just gonna ask the story you had about the snowmobilers.
Mm-hmm.
You said that they kind of had an argument and never made amends between the time one of them passed away. What was their argument with each other over that experience?
Over the experience, because he wouldn't give him the gun. He wanted to hold on to the gun. It was the only gun they had.
So it was such a life-changing experience that they stopped being friends after that.
You gotta understand village friends. You see each other every day, you just stop talking.
Gotcha.
You see what I mean? It's not necessarily, you're no longer my friend. It's not quite like that. just arguing over the gun, you know, that fear kicks in. It's not a joke. Like, if anyone in here has ever felt that fear, it's surreal. It really, it brings everything to a very finite thought, and that's your own demise. And that's something hard to swallow. The only reason I was able to even function in 06 that night is I resigned myself to death. I accepted my death. That's the only reason I stopped trembling. I sat there for hours gripping that shotgun so hard my hands hurt. But anyway, damn near out of time here. Is there any other questions anyone may have?
I'm still unclear. Is there any, do you have any feelings that that was not just an animal, but it was actually related to Homo sapiens?
Well, I'm not an anthropologist or a scientist, although I did see features that were human-like for sure. I mean, around the eyes, it reminded me of those old tintypes of Native Americans that are real wrinkly, you know? It was that, high cheekbones, real flat, broad nose. The one I saw up close, I only saw it from the bottom of its